Somewhere in your body right now, there is an enzyme whose only job is to break down alcohol, and it has been there, running quietly, for millions of years, before your ancestors ever took a single sip. Ancient humans didn't stumble onto alcohol and decide to experiment. In a very real biological sense, their bodies were already built for it. We'll get to exactly what evolutionary pressures made drinking spread and stick, but the starting point isn't a cup, it's a gene. That enzyme running quietly in your body right now, it didn't appear because humans started drinking. It appeared roughly 10 million years before humans existed, and the reason why tells you something genuinely strange about the relationship between your biology and alcohol. Biologist Robert Dudley at the University of California, Berkeley identified what he called the drunken monkey hypothesis. The core idea is this: human attraction to alcohol may derive from the dependence of primate ancestors on ripe and fermenting fruit as a dominant food source, because ethanol naturally occurs in ripe and overripe fruit when yeasts ferment sugars. That's not a small claim. Every fig, every fallen mango, every overripe berry your ancestors ate contained measurable, detectable ethanol, not as contamination, but as a natural byproduct of yeast fermenting sugars and producing alcohol to kill off bacterial competitors. That ethanol wafts into the environment, producing a downwind vapor trail that reliably signals the presence of ripe fruit. Your ancestors weren't just tolerating ethanol, they were using it as a navigation signal. The smell of fermentation was, in a very literal sense, the smell of calories, but the body had to be able to handle what it was following toward. Researchers resurrected ancestral ADH4 enzymes from various points in roughly 70 million years of primate evolution and identified a single mutation occurring approximately 10 million years ago that endowed our ancestors with a markedly enhanced ability to metabolize ethanol. One mutation, one change in the code. That mutation in class 4 alcohol dehydrogenase resulted in a remarkable 40-fold increase in the capacity to oxidize ethanol, which allowed our ancestors to ingest fallen, fermenting fruit. Think about what that number means. Before this mutation, a primate eating fermenting fruit off the forest floor was getting hammered by trace amounts of alcohol its body could barely process. After it, that same animal could handle the load without impairment and keep eating. This change occurred approximately when our ancestors adopted a more terrestrial lifestyle and may have been advantageous to primates living where highly fermented fruit is more likely. When your ancestors came down from the trees, the fruit they found on the ground was often overripe, bruised, already fermenting. The mutation wasn't a coincidence. It was a direct biological response to a new dietary reality. Here's the pattern interrupt the whole story pivots on. The human body did not adapt to alcohol after humans started drinking. It adapted millions of years before humans existed. By the time Homo sapiens arrived, the metabolic machinery was already installed, already tested, already running. Drinking wasn't a new experiment the species was undertaking. It was, in a very real sense, a continuation of something the lineage had been doing for 10 million years. Which is exactly why, when early humans began deliberately fermenting things at an archaeological scale, the transition was so seamless. The earliest evidence of man-made alcohol was discovered at a burial site in Reykjavik Cave near present-day Haifa, Israel, where researchers from Stanford University analyzed residues from 13,000-year-old stone mortars and recognized evidence of beer brewing, hypothesizing that the Natufians made beer for ritual feasts to venerate deceased members of their community. These were not people stumbling onto something alien. They were people formalizing a biological relationship their ancestors had maintained for millions of years. Their bodies already knew what to do with it. The question was never about capability. Alcohol turned out to solve problems your ancestors didn't even know they had. The Natufians were brewing beer 13,000 years ago for ritual feasts. So here's a quick one. Do you think alcohol spread because of survival necessity or because of social and ritual use? Drop your answer in the comments below. Either way, the answer gets more complicated once you see what alcohol was actually solving for your ancestors biologically. So what problems was it solving? Here's what early human communities were actually navigating: a world without clean water, without refrigeration, without any reliable way to know whether what you were about to drink would kill you before morning. And in that world, mildly fermented liquid wasn't a luxury. It was the safer option. Fermentation is, at its core, a biological war. Yeast produces alcohol specifically to poison the bacteria competing for the same sugars. When your ancestors brewed even a weakly fermented drink, something with a low alcohol content, barely intoxicating, the alcohol was already killing off the pathogens that standing water and stagnant pools harbored. The archaeological record backs this up. Fermentation vessels appear consistently near early settlement sites, not as ceremonial outliers, but as functional infrastructure. Alongside the antimicrobial benefit came a caloric one. Fermented grain delivers more usable energy than raw grain because fermentation breaks down complex starches that human digestion struggles to fully access on its own. In lean seasons, that gap was not trivial. It was the difference between a group that made it through and one that didn't. That's the first reason. The second runs deeper. Hunter-gatherers in environments where plant matter was abundant but inconsistently digestible were leaving energy on the table with every raw meal. Fermentation unlocked that energy. Nutritional anthropology research suggests that fermented foods could meaningfully increase the caloric yield from the same raw inputs, and for a population moving constantly, burning calories at a high rate, and facing periodic food scarcity, that surplus wasn't a bonus, it was survival math. And then there's the third reason, the one almost nobody talks about because it doesn't feed the body. It binds the group. Alcohol triggers the release of endorphins and oxytocin, the same neurochemical cascade that happens during social grooming in primates. Researcher Robin Dunbar at Oxford has studied this mechanism and found that communal drinking activates the brain's social bonding circuitry in ways that mirror the effect of physical touch and cooperative behavior. That's not a metaphor. The chemistry is genuinely parallel. For a species that survived because of group cohesion, because coordinated hunting, shared defense, and collective child-rearing outcompeted individual effort, anything that reliably deepened social bonds had direct survival value, which is why Göbekli Tepe changes the entire picture. Built in what is now southeastern Turkey, roughly 11,000 years ago, it is the earliest known monumental architecture on Earth. Stone pillars, organized ritual space, built before settled agriculture. And researchers found fermentation vessels there. Large ones. The implication is extraordinary. People were gathering, coordinating massive collective labor, and drinking together before they had farms, before they had permanent settlements. Alcohol may have been a social technology first, and a dietary one second. The ritual used the Natufians were practicing at Racefet Cave wasn't a cultural add-on to an already established dietary habit. It may have been the origin point. Here's where the raised stakes land. The same wiring that made all of this adaptive, the reward signal, the endorphin release, the lowered inhibition, the warmth of belonging, is still running in you right now, exactly as it was designed. The problem is that the survival pressures that justified it are gone. There's no contaminated water source the fermented drink is protecting you from. The lean season isn't coming. The group cohesion you need isn't sealed by a shared vessel around a fire. But the ancient circuitry doesn't know that. It just fires. So the next time you feel the pull of a drink at the end of a hard day, that's not weakness. That's a 10-million-year-old enzyme and a 10,000-year-old social ritual running exactly as evolution designed them, in a world they were never designed for. Subscribe for more on the ancient wiring running your modern life, and watch this one next.